like in real person, or even cooler. Like, it's like, wow.
When you see him painted and everything?
Yeah, well, I'm together conventionally right now. Even seeing that box over there, it's really is.
Try and vocalize as much as possible, but allow me to apologize ahead of time. So what we've got here is our AE World War II Pulp City crossover event. I have no idea how this is going to go, so we'll just play and see and have some fun, right? So we're really good friends with the guys from Pulp City. We love their stuff, they love our stuff. That's why we're doing this, just to have some fun, throw it all together. The games really lend themselves well because of their real pulp aspect. So in this case, the Germans have a new, in our game, the Germans have this strange new character has appeared named the Red Baron. And it's a new Pulp City hero, or villain, just for this convention. And the Red Baron is a master of the occult. So, using his occult powers, he calls through space and time to ask for the aid of others like him. So that's where the villains come in. So, from Pulp City, the Pulp City villains arrive to wreak havoc and gain power and aid the Germans as much as possible. The American Airborne, along with their occult forces and their sci-fi forces, get word of some strange new allies that the Germans are having. So as such, they come in to find out what's going on and to wipe them out wherever they can. As they're surrounded by these huge, super powerful villains, they get a radio signal from unknown forces saying that help is on the way. And all they got to do is maintain their position and hold these radio positions, and then these heroes will arrive. But they don't know who they are, and obviously they're the heroes from Pulp City who've had word that the villains have come back to this alternate reality. Thanks. So, the goal of the game is for the Americans to defend these three positions, these chaos dice right here. Each one of those represents a radio position. They can be destroyed. Every turn starting on turn 2, a superhero will arrive. And you guys can pick which one. You pick where he shows up, and then they start kicking butt. However, the Germans have already caught wind of the whole thing, so they're coming to try and blow them up. So I know some of you guys are familiar with our game and some of you aren't, so we'll just do a real quick crash test. This is a double game. This is double the size of a normal AE World War II game. And obviously we're adding the heroes and the villains to it. So you have 2 detachments per side. You got 1 German detachment over there and 1 over here. You got 1 American detachment here and 1 there. Every turn, after we determine which side goes first, each side is gonna activate 1 unit from each detachment. So these guys right here are, for example, 1 unit. The officer is 1 unit, that sort of thing. When you activate a unit, each model in the unit gets a certain number of action points based on their training level. You spend the action points to move, shoot, engage in close combat, that sort of thing. Once the unit has taken all their action points or passed on their turn or whatever, then it's their turn, and they activate 1 unit from each detachment, and backwards and forwards till everybody's gone. That's the end of turn 1. And then you continue in that vein. Now when you spend an action point to move, your models, I have some quick reference sheets I'll get for you guys in a minute. When you spend an action point to move, your model can move up to their movement rating in inches. For most people it's going to be 3 inches. The superheroes it might be a lot more. The robots are a little slow, and so is the buffalo. You can also spend all your action points to sprint, and it has to be the only action you take, and you triple your movement. It has to be in a straight line, and it cannot be over difficult terrain. The robots and the buffalo cannot sprint because they're slow. A sprint that ends in base contact with an enemy is considered a charge. You follow it up with a single close combat attack. Now, when you make a close combat attack, when you're in base contact with an enemy, you roll a die and add your close combat rating. Your opponent rolls a die and adds their close combat rating. Whoever scores higher inflicts a hit on their enemy. You then roll for the strength of the attack. You roll 1d6 and add your model's strength value. Your opponent then is allowed an armor check. They roll a die and add their armor value. And if the armor value equals or exceeds the total strength of the attack, nothing happens. Otherwise, the attack inflicts 1 or more wounds. If it's strength 10 or lower, it only inflicts 1, 11 and higher, it inflicts more. So ranged combat is done pretty much the same way. However, all you need to do is roll a die and add, or you equal to or greater than your model's ranged combat value. Most models will have a 4. The robots, who are abysmal shots, have a 6. Now, if you're outside of half of the weapon's range in inches, it's a long-range shot, which means you get +1 penalty to hit. However, you can never roll above a 6, or you never need above a 6. So the robots always need 6s. So then, when you inflict a hit with a ranged weapon, you do the same way. The weapons have a static strength value plus a number of 6-sided dice. Everything has a +1 d6, except your bazooka, which has +2 d6. And that determines the total strength of the attack. So that's how ranged combat works. One thing we have in AE World War II is a very dynamic morale system. Instead of just making passive rolls every now and again, each of your units has a drive value. And then when that drive value decreases by casualties, the drive value will eventually reach 0. As soon as a unit's drive value reaches 0, they rout. If they're in close combat when that happens, they surrender. The way to mitigate those losses is by using your officers. You have this officer here, and then the guy with the Thompson on the left there. Those guys have the command ability. For 1 action point, they can choose a unit within 12 inches and remove 1 drive penalty from them. So you use those guys to boost their morale back up to its normal value and prevent them from running away. So towards the end of the game, as casualties start to mount, you're going to need to run around with your officers, and just all you do is spend all their action points raising the morale of your troops. So that's the basics of how the game works. If you're behind cover, that adds to your armor value. It doesn't give you a penalty to hit or anything. So you want to seek cover as much as possible. And in this situation, the Americans are already in position, and when we begin turn 1, the Germans are actually going to move onto the table. So they're actually not on the table yet, and they begin play with their villains, all right? So right now, who wants to play the Axis and who wants to play the Allies? Let's divide that up and figure that out. Doesn't matter to me. Yeah. All right, so we got 3 German players over here.
The Americans.
Or Americans. Yeah.
All right, Mike, you want to help out the Germans?
I will help out the Germans.
You can be on the side, the winning side. The winning side.
The whining side, you say?
All right, so we determine on which side I go.
Yeah,
the winning side.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so here are the stats for the heroes. There's 1 for each of you, and there's the stats for the villains. Good. Just finished the opening spiel, so if you want to, we got the allies over here, and the Axis over here. These guys.
You said we were already set up.
He does, but he don't care about it.
But we are behind cover, and they've got it, so it gives us time to run to the wall. So.
I got that. It's been working out really well. We've been shouting out AE. But since this is an AE Pulp City, gonna have to make it bigger. So on the count of 3, we're gonna shout out AE Pulp City. All right. So 1, 2, 3. AE Pulp City.
All right,
Thank you, gentlemen.
yes. Good job,
Thank you very much.
All right, so Dan's gonna jump in on the allies. David, do you want to go to the Axis?
Hey, right here.
The guy in the left. Yeah. He got a nice cold this week. You want to watch over here? So I can probably do
Hey, Mike, they're gonna watch.
No, stay in. You're good. I'll just kind of jump in.
Yeah, I know that. All right, guys.
He wasn't signed up.
So. All right. So. All right. What we're gonna do now is. Why don't you guys take the Germans a little bit, push them off the table there, so that way we know that they're not actually on there.
So the Germans can enter anywhere from any edge. Okay.
But they got to move on as their actions.
Okay. Wait, so who owns what troops?
So why don't we?
Those are already on. Oh, the here's.
No, everything's on.
Yeah, everything's
They're
off.
going to start.